I don't even know where to start. So I watched a thing on TLC, which was my first mistake, because several months back, I was talking with a friend of mine about reality television. She was saying, you really need to venture more into TLC because that's a mess in a very, very particular way. If you're unfamiliar with TLC because you have a life or they don't offer TLC where you live, it stands for the Learning Channel, which is quite the misnomer because you ain't learned shit on the Learning Channel, bitch. Maybe you did at one point, but it's been a very, 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 very long time since that was the case. What it is actually is this incredibly exploitative carnival ride through unconventional family dynamics or people with severe mental illness. And very rarely is there any like analysis or critique or consideration towards these people. It's just, look at it, weird. It's weird, isn't it? Kind of weird and strange. That's crazy, weirdo. And psycho. But with that said, I'd be lying if I said I were innocent. Like I've never seen anything from TLC. Quite the opposite. Especially when I had cable. I haven't had cable in like 10 years, but like when I had cable, constantly. And even not too long ago, I really considered doing a video on Big Ed. And I still might do that because he sucks. But I find that he sucks in such a particular way that would involve me watching a lot of Big Ed. And I don't want to do that. But if I find myself already going down that rabbit hole, you'll see a video at some point. But yes, usually it's like very exploitative relationships or family dynamics, hella exploitation of kids. And they tend to get away with it by maybe putting a lazy disclaimer at the beginning, like the views expressed in the show aren't the same as TLC or whatever. Again, there's no like analysis or anything that they actually offer. But I would say in the mid 2000s, early 2010s, that's when their bread and butter was really unconventional families. John and Kate plus 8, the Duggars, Sister Wives. I do love me some Sister Wives. I ain't gonna lie. How do you look? Okay, the guy on Sister Wives lost 3 out of 4 wives. That's a horrible batting average. Awful. I might watch it all the way through though, just because how do you do that? Which brings me to me and my friend. We were talking about kind of their short-lived specials where she brought up a show or a TLC special called My Husband's Not Gay. Needless to say, I was intrigued. I put it on my list of things to look into, forgot about it for months, returned to it earlier this week. And I'm sorry I have to subject you to this because I have so many thoughts. I have so many thoughts. It's a 1-hour special that left me so confused and saddened and annoyed and disgusted and confused and saddened again. And it came out in 2015. So being that there was quite a bit of time since it happened, I was curious, has anyone, had any changes in their lives? Are there any updates? So curiosity got me, I'm sorry. Hello everyone, this is Adroll Kenny, and today's video is sponsored by Lalo. Topically significant. If only today's focus of a video would have had the freedom that is allotted through sexual exploration. Lalo is my personal favorite adult toy brand, and they really align with my values that self-pleasure is a wonderful thing, an educational thing, an exploratory thing, a self-wellness and health thing. It helps with mood. It helps with knowing your body and what brings you pleasure. You can have more pleasure by yourself or with a partner. It's meditative. It helps you with stress. It helps you with sleep. There's nothing dirty or embarrassing about it. Now, Lalo stole my heart with the Enigma Wave, but being that they are constantly innovating, they have come out with the Enigma Double Sonic, baby. 100% waterproof, made from extra soft silicone that has the capacity to stimulate the G-spot and the ever elusive A-spot, resulting in a unique and intense dual sensation. It's also app compatible that unlocks 2 exclusive modes that combine with the already included 8 settings and the incredibly long-lasting battery life. It's reliable and built to last. You're welcome. You don't even have to say thank you yet, I know. And if you would like to try out Lalo, I got you a little discount. You can check it out using the link down below and use my code Kennie15 for 15% off. Big thanks again to Lalo for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get on to the debauchery. TLC presents My Husband's Not Gay is a 2015 reality special of sorts, which follows several Mormon couples in Utah, in which the husband has admitted to the wife that they are attracted to men and have decided to ignore that, forego that, and marry a woman anyway because that is what God would want and how God would like me to live. Instead of identifying with being gay or bisexual or pansexual or whatever, these men kind of poo-poo that more conventional understanding of their sexual attractions to men and say instead that they have SSA or same-sex attraction.
I experience SSA or same-sex attraction.
Not gay.
Distinguishing it from being gay because they don't live a gay lifestyle as they are married to women or are looking to marry women. Instead of an identity, well, sometimes they treat it like an identity, but generally, instead of an identity in which they live as a gay man or as a bi man or whatever, they see it as an ailment, like an affliction, to which they have to constantly keep tabs on, monitor, manage. They kind of treat it like an addiction, like being careful to not bring alcohol around someone who's a recovering alcoholic and stuff like that. That's how they treat it, and have created an entire social circle of men who suffer from this in order for them to all live righteous lives. This is depressing. As you can imagine, when it came out, it was very controversial and got a lot of backlash for a lot of good reason. Partially because TLC doesn't seem to opine on whether or not they agree with this, but being as there seems to be like a pattern of these like hyper-religious families being represented without much criticism by TLC, it does seem to, in many ways, condone this behavior implicitly, if not explicitly, regardless of their little booty-ass disclaimer in the beginning. Now, the wives in these relationships are all aware of their partner's attraction to men, but see themselves as sort of accountability partners of sorts to their husbands, which is more or less difficult depending on the couple. Not because you're doing anything to keep them accountable, it's just because the husband may also be attracted to women, so it's not really that hard for him. He's just attracted to both and it just is what it is. But for the men that are pretty obviously not attracted to women at all and are married to women, they're really downplaying, I believe, how difficult this is because it's just not conducive to healthy relationships of any kind with yourself or a spouse. And so you sit there and it's an uncomfortable 40-minute watch following 3 married couples in Salt Lake City who are constantly vigilant to avoid their attraction to men while like really upbeat doo-wop music plays, and then they put them in really awkward scripted situations to like really bump up the like, I'm really into that guy, but God, you know? Like it's and again, beyond that, just wildly offensive. It is I am at a loss for words. It is strange that it was made at all, asinine even, but dangerous to say the least. It was shot down by a lot of LGBT groups, particularly because it's essentially willing away the gay, in many ways likened to conversion therapy, which is still very prevalent in a lot of hyper-religious spaces. But unfortunately or fortunately, it has gotten some traction recently by being uncovered by present audiences. But which is kind of a good thing, because at the time, people just kind of consumed it and maybe didn't even think really much about it and maybe even agreed with the notions of it in 2015. So it is good, you know, nearly 10 years later to be able to look at it and say, wow, this was very harmful and dumb. Don't do this. Don't do anything like this. But again, being that it's been so long, I was curious if any of the men just decided to be who they are for their pride. Thank you. So the first couple is Jeff and Tanya, then married for 9 years, with Jeff, of course, experiencing what they refer to as SSA. Notably, they don't have any wives who are referring to themselves as same-sex attracted. It's just men, probably because society feels very particular about gay men, as if it's an affront to masculinity to be attracted to other men. But this is where they really talk about and emphasize, again, there's a distinction between having SSA and being gay. With that said, Jeff does admit that he is 9 times out of 10 more likely to be attracted to a man than a woman. Damn, arguably that's barely even bi. 90% of the time. And I wonder to what degree that's even an honest figure. But okay, especially when you feel as though you have to repress so much. Okay, that's a gay man. Anyway, he swears that he's attracted to his wife. But they explain that being that they're both Mormon and homosexuality is not permitted in the church, he likens SSA as sort of like a disability, which him and his wife have to manage and keep track of, have security systems for. And he's elected to completely ignore 90% of his attraction to be married to this woman. Okay. The second couple is Pratt and Megan. They were then married for 8 years. Megan always had feelings for him, but he was kind of hot and cold because I imagine he was trying to make sense of his attraction to men. But he did end up telling her of his attraction to men not long before they were married, and they got married anyway. I guess because, I don't know, I guess he, said that he really was attracted to her and really loved her, and he wanted to have kids, he wanted to be married, he wanted to live righteously, which is most likely the reason why they ended up getting married anyway. They talk about how there were definitely points in which he didn't seem to be attracted to her. I'm laughing out of just sadness. But they have a daughter now and seem to be interested in having more kids, so they're just trying to manage this thing. The last couple is Tara and Curtis, right? At the time, they were married for 20 years, and he had told her that he was attracted to men 4 years prior to that. What I find most interesting about this couple is that he brings up bisexuality by name.
In mainstream America, they're considered bisexual.
Unlike the other couples, in my opinion, who feel like they have to force attraction to women and to their wives specifically, I feel like he actually is attracted to her and is attracted to women, but also attracted to men. And I think because of that, they're more likely to fundamentally work because he's actually attracted to her. He's not trying to force attraction. He just is attracted to her. And he also has the capacity to be attracted to men as well. Again, it's still very restrictive in the sense that he can't identify as a person that feels that way. He, again, has to think of it as an affliction, as a disease, as something he has to manage. And he has to understand it as distinctly different from bisexuality because of his religious reasons. Being that he does understand that he's attracted to men and women, it makes more sense that they would survive because it's just like a bisexual person being in a monogamous relationship. You have the capacity to be attracted to the spectrum of genders, but you chose to be married to a woman. Like, it is what it is. But again, there is still that burden of I'm married to a woman because God wants me to be married to a woman and to have kids and to do all that. Again, there's this vague mention of making mistakes in the past. I don't know what that means. But okay. God had delivered. I'm not gay no more. I'm delivered. Sorry. He's so funny. I hate him. He sucks. But I quote so many things from him. I'm not gay no more. I'm delivered. People are tired of the LGBT community. I don't like no men's. I like kitty meow meow. I like women's. Okay. Anyway, these couples tend to congregate, if not just for this show, together generally for like a SSA support group in which they all gather together to do Bible study. They may or may not invite their straight friends to said Bible study, which I find interesting to make the distinction of them being straight. If you're not considering yourself gay, I'm confused, but okay. Speaking of which, the straight friend comes in and talks about how SSA is a big problem in another country. I can't remember. I want to say Argentina. Doesn't matter. But he says it's a big problem, which seems to offend the couples in the room, weirdly, because they're not offended by homophobia. They're offended by a lack of distinction between SSA and homosexuality. Homosexuality being a lifestyle and SSA being an affliction, a diagnosis. And it seems that they want him to have more compassion. This is so weird. For this ailment that they're going through and struggling with. And they don't want their attraction to be seen as a condemnation or a judgment of their character, which is wild because, like, if you take out the ailment, like the judgment on being attracted to men, that is the core of why people are against homophobia. But you're using all of these like type ropes and it's so weird to like dissect it in such a way when it all boils down to you don't want somebody to be homophobic towards you. Being that you're already homophobic towards yourself, I don't know. So you've made this distinction so that you don't feel gay, but you are a little gay or bisexual. I don't know. It's so confusing. they're okay with you judging being gay, i.e. being in gay relationships, having gay sex, dating other men. But it is okay that I want to do all those things. Like, it's so... Okay, so being that this is a constructed reality show by TLC, they do have to put them in certain situations that really up this, like, conflict, I guess. They make them do stereotypical man things, like play basketball. But they'll see men shirts versus skin, so they're seeing, like, wet men going up and down a court, sweating and breathing all hard with muscles glistening and stuff. And then they want them to make sense of this and behave ungaily. So what they end up discussing is that they have sort of a public 4-point scale in which they discuss the dangers, quote unquote, of being attracted to men. 4 meaning, quote, requiring restraints.
4 pretty much means you're requiring restraints.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Does that not sound like rapey to you? This is creepy. This is bad. And they still have that jaunty music in the background. This is why so much assault ends up happening in these hyper-religious spaces, not just LGBTQ people, but just in general, when you like hyper-vigilant looking at someone's sexuality, it's so ripe for this type of mindset, like, oh, holding back, restraint, like I broke away from the restraints, I'm sorry. Like, no, if you were able to healthfully explore your sexuality consensually, this idea of requiring restraints is very alarming to me. Like, you don't just hop and fall on a dick. Like, what danger? I'm scared. Like, I'm confused. We are introduced to the only single SSA afflicted man named Tom, who, like the others, are intending to ignore his attraction to men. If I had to pick a person that was somewhat enjoyable, I guess it's him. He's kind of funny sometimes, but obviously, being that we're on the show for the reasons he's there, this sucks. This is bad. This is not good. I really need you to be who you are so that you can be happy and you don't have to end up in a terrible marriage where you're not attracted to the woman and she don't have to be in a relationship where she feels not attractive to her partner, and it's just all around bad. Anyway, the other SSA support group members decide that they want to set him up with a woman for some reason, for the cameras. He does confirm that he's interested in men, but he's not interested in men, which if it weren't tied to religious guilt and internalized homophobia and compulsory heterosexual behavior, I'd get it. I think there's no better example of sexuality not being a choice than me looking like this big booby, 6 foot tall, straight woman. My dating life would have been a lot easier before this if I was into women. Damn it, man. Because men are a lot sometimes. So I understand not being interested in dating them, especially if you had another choice. So we learn more about the dynamics of the couples when the wives go on a hike with some other women that don't know about their husband and their SSA. And they tell them about it, where obviously they would have some questions around sex and romance and attraction, which is, you know, theoretically pretty important in a marriage. So they do the whole distinguishing of SSA to being gay. They're so close to the point. They're always so close where they're like, SSA is just like who they are, not what they do. So it's an identity, like an orientation, like a sexual orientation, like an identity, a part of who they are, like being gay. You're always so close. But again, they've decided that it's not the same as being gay, and they have sex like any other couple and yada, 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 and they're in romantic relationships and it's great. With that said, only one couple actually seems to believe that, which is the one where the husband, I believe, is just straight up bisexual, which again would insinuate that he's attracted to her and that's why they have sex. Oh, but all of this like contortion, like this tightrope to make sense of it, just seems so exhausting to me. Jesus Christ. But again, the other two seem to just liken it up to the waxing and waning of any other normal marriage's, you know, level of sex. Okay. More scenarios that TLC definitely set them up with, in which Jeff ends up attracted to a waiter that comes over, which leads the table into discussing that. And this, again, bleeds more into this conversation of danger and temptation, more about that like 4-point scale to understand what that means. And one of the wives, I want to say Megan, asked, what do you mean by that? Like, what does that mean? And this is what he says, quote, if I was drugged and forgot I was married to you and I was in a back alley with romantic music, would anything happen? That's the number 4 on the scale. What? What a strange scenario. Of all the scenarios you could pick, again, there's this like rapey undertone that seems to be the reoccurring thing for these men. I have a theory. This does feel very like bodice ripper example, yeah? Where women were not able to openly express their desire for sex, and so they would lean into a fantasy in which their desires are met without having to openly consent, so that they can experience the thing that they wanted without having to admit to another party or themselves that they are so lowly to desire this completely human thing. That's why there's so much of that in a lot of smut. There's a lot of consensual non-consent, dubious consent, all that type of stuff in that genre, partially because of this very like sex negative way that we talk about wanting and desiring sex. So this is that, just in gay. Where he's like, if there were an opportunity where I wouldn't have to admit that I'm cheating, and I wouldn't have to admit these things that I want and I desire, and I were assaulted, then yeah, it might happen. What? I would have this level of plausible deniability around it. And that's the scale that he uses. That's just like psychologically, mentally, emotionally, like having to be with a person that you actually don't want to be with every day, to the extent that you have to imagine these like fantasies where you could partake in gay sex, but only if you conceptualize gay sex as violence. It's up. It's really like, it's really bad. Like, I just hate it. You could have just said, if I didn't have religious guilt and weren't married, I'd them. Like, there we go. That's the scale, baby. That's it. The husbands take Tom, the single one, to get clothes for his date. That's where they run into a guy who used to go to the SSA meetings or whatever, who seems to have made sense and accepted himself and just lives as a gay man now. Thank God. I believe he has a boyfriend that he comes in with, or a partner of some kind. And they ask Tom, they're setting you up with a girl. Sure about that? He does like clarify, I am attracted to women too, but then goes into SSA, and one of the men asks, does he see his attraction to men as a trial, a thing that he has to suffer through? Which he agrees, like, yes, he thought of it as like a curse. I'm about to cry. He thought of it like a curse. That's fucked up. But now he's like learning to deal with it. They also ask if any of them had dated men, and Jeff said that he had prior to his marriage, but again, probably because of religious guilt, he couldn't enjoy it. You know, he couldn't really explore it. The two gay men that came in, they basically say like, no, we wouldn't be able to rough it. The attraction isn't there. Like, there's no point of putting everyone through this. It's bad. It's like not good at all for anyone involved. Later, Tanya seems to get jealous at the notion that Jeff is going to be going to a camping trip with some guys, prompting them to talk again incredibly vaguely about there being a time in which he messed up, he was unfaithful to such a degree that it makes her worried about him spending time with men. Quote, I love him for who he is, not for who he should be. Who should he be, bitch? He should be a gay man. I don't know. Oh my God. They have the blind date for Tom, introducing him to one of the women's friends. He has a lot of concern about whether or not he'll be attracted to her before seeing her, but he seems to be relieved that she's attractive enough, I guess. No one seems to have told the super religious Mormon woman about him being attracted to men. They didn't think they should have told her about that, especially for his safety. I don't know how open he's on TLC, I guess. And so at the end of the night, after having a good night and then making a bunch of inappropriate jokes about him also being attracted to men and several of the men in the room being attracted to men, he takes her to the side and tells her about his attraction to men, and she takes it well. I mean, better than I would have expected, honestly. But also there's cameras all over the place. She's gonna call him a slur on camera? Probably not. But again, there is this like hyper focus when he speaks about nothing about his attraction to her or liking any qualities about her, but simply that he wants marriage, kids, and living a life that God wants him to live. That's essentially the show. Again, all the like upbeat doo-wop music in the background and whatnot. And it's just sad. It's really sad. Like, it's just up that in so many communities around the world, people are actively demonized for just having normal sexual attractions, and just so much goes awry from trying to ignore that and run away from that and making it at best something that you have to deal with like a chronic disease. It just sounds ripe for gnawing away at you and your personhood and your happiness, and I don't know, this is dumb. Well, I want to clarify though, I do understand why someone would do this. Religious indoctrination discrimination, religious guilt, all of that shit is so strong. Especially, again, as a person who was raised in the church, I understand that wholeheartedly. Especially because a lot of like hyper-religious areas have a hyper-vigilance around sex in general, but especially gay sex, gay attraction. But like sex in general is a very like crucial part of kind of controlling the congregation. But it's just sad because it makes sexual attraction that is normal be seen as illness that can be cured by just lying to yourself and deny yourself a freedom and self-understanding that will always be just out of reach because you wanted this life that you were told you're supposed to want. It's fucking sad. Again, with that said, it's been 10 years and I was curious what everybody was up to. If anybody had gotten divorced, if anybody had any epiphanies. And from what I can tell, no. Everyone's still together as far as I can tell. Several of which, though, have become therapists and quote unquote life coaches who help other men suffering from SSA. I did go into a little rabbit hole actually a few months back, also related to Mormonism, when I was looking into the Ruby Frankie story. Really sad. Don't bum yourself out if you don't know what I'm talking about. But essentially, one of the components of that was that there was a person involved who was a licensed clinical therapist who manipulated and groomed a lot of Mormon people into believing some absolutely asinine shit that just isn't scientific or clinical or anything, just straight up being insane. And I remember when I was going into that rabbit hole, I found the Mormon Stories podcast, in which Mormon therapists who do use evidence-based methods and research to do their practice, they were basically shunned away from the Mormon church because the Mormon church recommends a lot of Mormons to specific therapists. And if you are a therapist who talks about normal sexual activity, masturbation, healthy exploration, being LGBTQ, being queer in any way, they will kick your ass off that list so quickly. So it doesn't surprise me that they are this, but it does piss me off. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with these feelings or emotions other than make a video. But if you are a part of any community that is really like diminishing such a crucial part of your identity, baby, I don't even know how to end this. I'm just bummed. Like, I just screaming, be who you are. It's probably not going to help. But if anything, hopefully this video has really like brought to attention one of the many ways in which like high control communities really can gnaw at you, and hopefully finding resources that aren't this like cyclone, this echo chamber. But yeah, if you have any thoughts, feel free to put those down in the comment section. I would love to see if someone has a more cohesive thought. I was just so flabbergasted by this viewing experience that to some degree I'm like speechless. Yeah, if you like this video, feel free to like this video. Comment down below. Have you seen it? Sorry. Or if you have any experiences with this stuff, you can feel free to put that down in the comment section if you want to. Yeah, feel free to subscribe. I talk about all types of stuff. Follow me on Instagram and no longer on Twitter, bitch. It's still there. My Twitter's still there, but I am done. I'm so done with Twitter. I'm tired of the bots. I'm tired of saying, oh man, I'm really depressed today. And someone's like, well, do you want to see my coochie and bio? Like, I'm so tired. My final straw was the election because I have that orange bitch muted and I was getting advertisements for him post-election. I'm not doing this. Elon can suck a dick. That's why you built like a Rubik's Cube. And I'm out of this bitch. If you want to follow me, I'm KennieJD on Blue Sky though. And I'm really enjoying it. It felt like old Twitter before. Again, coochie bots and fascism. Like it's just people showing pictures of their cats and saying funny things. And I really like it. So follow me on Blue Sky, KennieJD. And I will see you guys next time.